Hi there. I think we just dropped out just a little bit there. I'm testing again. Lil, can you hear us? Fantastic. Sorry there. Just having a technical issue. Just had a message through from Krishna there saying, okay, I think she's going to try and call in now from her own things. Sorry there, our first caller. If you wouldn't mind just calling in just one more time, just to connect there. I'm afraid it does kind of drop out. There you are. I can see you.
Hello. No problem at all.
Sorry, yeah. It does, it kind of only allows one host at a time, I'm afraid. So where did we get up to? We were talking about the displays that you had up in your class at the moment, the ones you've already been in to do.
Yes. So I don't know if most of you heard the rest of the topic, but at the moment I've got a class behaviour board. So I've split it into my class and what our expectations are. And we have a above and beyond board, which goes with the school values. And what I'm going to be setting up for the first day of term is, because our school looks at nature themed classes, my one being oak class, I've designed little names on bits of bark, and they get to colour it in, and we'll create a tree. We'll go into forest school and we'll trace over some leaves, etc. And we'll use that against the above and beyond board, and children will be able to stick their names on if they are going above and beyond. And again, the Jane Carlstein approach that we use is pretty much all over the classroom. If you saw on my Twitter, you could probably see it's all over the windows. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the year ahead.
Well, those do sound some really interesting ones. Now, we've got Krishna should be back in the studio. Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hopefully this is working.
Yep, there you go. We can hear you loud and clear. And I've just brought into the studio there Miss Jackson as well. So all of your guests are lined up. What I'm going to do, Krishna, is I'm going to take a little bit of a back seat now, but I'll keep it running and open. Yeah, you'll be free to talk. So thank you for letting me step on your toes a little bit there, Krishna, and
No
jumping
problem
in.
at all.
And I'll be in the background. I'll just mute myself now. All right.
Thank you, Nathan. I think I'm going to need you there in the background anyway, because for some reason my system's decided to crash. It said something along the lines of you're opened on another browser, which I don't seem to be able to figure out. Anyway, that was a very interesting debut show. Thank you to everyone who's showed up on time, and very, very sorry for what happened for the past 20 minutes. The most precious thing you could give anybody is your time. So thank you for being patient, and thank you for staying on. Right. So I didn't really follow what Jake was saying there. But anyway, thank you, Jake. My first question, are your displays up and ready? Are you ready to go for September?
I am, yes.
Right. So lovely. So can you tell us, especially for the NQTs and ECT teachers here, what were your first thoughts when you were tasked with setting up your classroom? Or in other words, if you were to give somebody advice, or maybe if you were to set up your very first classroom, where would you begin? What would be your first thought?
I think the first thing that I would look at is when you go into a school, for example, or you ask to go into, like, see the previous year group to go up to. So I'm in year 4 and I went to see the year 3 teacher. I made sure that I saw the classroom that I was going to be in first and take pictures. So what I did before I went in to decorate my classroom, I did a quick layout on PowerPoint, or for example, and I did a quick layout of the seats or the seating plan, and where the whiteboard is, where the smartboard is, where everything's going to be, and then in a different colour, put what each working wall or what display is going to be up in that area. So, for example, on my PowerPoint slide that I had, I know that I had an English working wall, and that was going to be the biggest one because that's one of the biggest focus in the school.
Absolutely.
And then because I haven't actually got a lot of display boards, if you saw on my Twitter, because it used to be a music room, and so what I did is I made sure that I brought my own whiteboard in, and that was going to be a resource, and make sure that was pinned up, and I put that in a different colour to say, look, that's a bit abnormal in the classroom, and you're going to put that there, and that's going to be your own wall. But also making sure, obviously, there's a lot of pupil voice as well. I think for me personally, I think that pupil voice is key. And I follow a particular person on Twitter, Blair Minchin, and I still have one of his books actually that he wrote, and it was really fascinating to see, and that's what I've gone on the lines of for my working walls, and getting the children to get involved in the displays, not the fact of, okay, you've done a bit of work, put it up, actually getting them actively involved. So for example, on my maths display, I'm going to put up a question each day, and they're going to show me how they do it using manipulatives and glue them up, etc. So getting them involved. And I think when I got in head first, now it was quite difficult for me, because obviously we've had the pandemic and the whole of the year fours were isolating, so their stuff was still in the room. So I had to work around that and get to grips with what I have to do. And I'm surprised I got it done within 3 days. But I think, look,
Wow, that's 3 days of your own time there, Jake?
Yes, and I did have a couple of people help me. It wasn't on my own, I must admit, because otherwise that would have been a bit hectic. But I just kept on looking at the plan, and if something didn't seem to go to plan, I'd change it and go, well, actually, I can make it into that. And I think, and one of my friends said this actually when she was decorating my class, because she's an ECT as well. And she was saying, I can see somebody else's class and I can see where to put things, but when it comes to my own, I really struggle. And I told her to do the plan, etc. But I think the thing is, if you do something and you go, right, okay, that's brilliant, and then you go away and you come back and you think, actually, that's not right, you can still amend it, because at the end of the day, it's your classroom and it's the way you want it to be. And I think that's what some people are feared at the moment.
Right, thank you. We have a caller calling us, KCDBST. So, Nathan, could you let him into the studio? There's very little I can do on a cell phone. Hello?
KCBST, we have sent you an invite now for you to be able to join the studio there. I can't see, I can see they're around. You can accept. I'm not sure if it's one of your planned guests or a caller in, but I have sent them an invite. Try again, KCDBST, if you want to talk. You have got a couple of other speakers who you should be able to see in the studio as well. They're with you, Krishna. Can you see those?
Yes, they are. So, Tori, hello. Thank you for coming in today.
Hi.
Hi. Right. Sorry. Very similar question to you. Jake's touched upon displays and then working walls. Interestingly, I got a Twitter message this morning where someone said, I hate displays, I love working walls. What's your take on that? Would you rather go for working walls all the way around? Or do you think there's place for a standalone display?
I think unless it's really going to benefit the students in some way, then it is just very pretty wallpaper. If it's not being either referred back to, if it's not able to be used, if it's not a talking point, if it's not something for them to hang their knowledge or their values on, then it is just very beautiful wallpaper.
Right,
which is
absolutely.
also really hard for me, because I am one of those people that wants really beautiful wallpaper and I want it to look all Pinterest and sparkly. But at the same time, I'm in an interesting position, because I'm a primary supply teacher who've just spent the last year doing long-term supply, but I've spent the last 10 years in nurseries and charities doing dance and music and movement, and creating the space along that. And it's disheartening when you spend hours and days making these gorgeous displays and then you come back a month later and they haven't been used at all, and just think a nice picture would have been just as beneficial.
True.
So yeah, I love working walls, or at least something that they can hang their knowledge on. If it's if it's showing their work, if they can talk about why their work's up there, and what they learn, then it's still useful. If it's just there to show some photos from 6 months ago, then it's not really worth it anymore.
Right. So in your opinion, how often do you think we need to be changing our displays?
Well, the school I just left, it changed with every single unit, which again meant that if someone came to observe you in that first week, there was nothing on the wall because it was all meant to be linked to exactly what the students were learning. I do think they need to reflect where the students are. So I personally love a proud cloud where the students can put their own work up because they are proud of it for whatever reason.
Lovely.
And that tends to be updated for me like every day or every other day, or as new knowledge comes up. So this year I've primarily done phonics. So as we've learned new sounds, new words have gone up on the board.
Nice. That reminds me of a teacher at my school who has an entire board dedicated to students where they can ask the teacher to make a copy of any one piece of work that they're proud of, and then he will photograph it and send it to their parents.
Yeah.
So,
and then what I did was when the work, if they had new work that they wanted to go onto the board, we took the old work down, we discussed why they were proud of the new work, where they've improved, what they're going to work on next time. And then they got to take their previous work home. Otherwise, it was just going to go recycling. And the children loved being able to go, look what I did 2 weeks ago. You should see what I can do now.
True. But considering the amount of time the teachers put in, especially to create 3D displays, I've been having a little field day with Twitter. I have to say, it's a confession. I am quite addicted to Twitter now. Lots and lots of classrooms where we have 3D displays. So if a teacher's put in that kind of effort, you would automatically, for selfish reasons, of course, want that display to stay up there for a bit longer.
Absolutely. I visited one school recently which had the most gorgeous art display, which included a 3D dragon climbing across the ceiling. It was absolutely unbelievable. And it was gorgeous. And I'm sure if anyone who may or may not work for Her Majesty's Inspectors came to visit, I'm sure they'd be very impressed. But
absolutely.
What benefit did it really have to the children?
True. Coming to displays and benefits to children, Rebecca, hi. Do you want to introduce yourself, Rebecca, because I know you're an assistant head?
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me? I don't know if this.
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah, I'm currently going into my 7th year of teaching, so I am a Year 6 teacher, and I've got experience across Key Stage 1 and 2. I am a member of the senior leadership team as well, but I am still in the classroom currently teaching Year 6.
Lovely. Just to follow up from what Toria said about displays and for them to be able to stay up. I find that I was going through Twitter and I found this very interesting teacher called Will, can't remember his second name, and I saw his classroom, beautifully done, lots of plants, and my first thought were, what a wonderful teacher. Now, my question is there a risk in being labeled or being considered a great teacher or a good teacher, or maybe even a bad one, simply because your displays are a bit different or they don't match up to the Pinterest-worthy display? Is there a risk?
I don't think so. I don't think you could judge a teacher until you walk into their classroom and see them stood at the front with their class and how they're engaging with the children. I don't think it would be right to judge a teacher based on that Pinterest style classroom. I think that would be wrong to do. I do think it is important to maybe take pride in your classroom and think about your classroom environment. I personally believe that if you put the effort into your classroom, then the children do see that, and they value the efforts that you put in to your classroom. But I definitely don't think teachers should be judged on what their display boards look like. I think that would definitely be wrong to do so.
Absolutely. I get what you're saying. But simply from the amount of effort that a person's put in, maybe among colleagues and students, isn't there a risk, not intentionally, of course, but you just form an opinion, don't you? Just by looking at that beautiful wall or that 3D dragon.
Yeah, I think you do. You do. It does draw you in. I think displays can draw you in, and I think that is important for children or for you to create those environments that lead to curiosity and make children want to, go away and research the topics themselves or delve a little bit deeper. Yeah, I do understand that you do walk in and you think, wow, look at that, but at the same time you don't know what that environment's like until all of the children are in there and that teacher's stood at the front talking to the class and teaching them.
Absolutely. But there's no denying there is a bit of peer pressure there. Right. Anyway, since you are in leadership, what kind of budgets are we looking at? What's the rough estimate for decorating a classroom, making it friendly and stimulating for pupils?
I wouldn't be able to talk about any other school other than my own. We're quite lucky where I work, where we are given a set amount to create immersive environments and to decorate our classrooms in that way that children can access different artifacts and different resources. But I wouldn't personally be able to comment on any other school budgets for classroom displays. Unfortunately, I wouldn't know.
No problem. No problem. That was an open question. Does anyone else, any of our guests have a thought about budgets? Because I've looked through the catalogue books and stuff, and some of those things are quite pricey, and you wonder how much would it take to completely be able to do up a classroom. I can see that we do have a primary head. I'm not sure if she wants to call in, so I'm going to let her decide, who might be able to tell us roughly how much it would cost or where the majority of that money would go to. But till she decides to call in, I am going to move on. I've got a comment here that says, I hate backing paper. Anyone who says that they enjoy backing boards and displays are lying. Well, and this is from someone called 21. And I have to say, my dear, Miss Delman has joined the call. Hello, Miss Delman.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Thank you very much for putting me on the spot. I appreciate it greatly.
Right. I'm very, very glad that without naming you, you managed to take the cue.
Yeah. I think in response to your question about budgets and how much should be spent, I think the word you used that I would argue with was decorating.
Right.
I agree with what was said earlier. There is no point doing anything in your classroom unless it's purposeful, unless it impacts on the students. So anything that we buy or put in will obviously have to have an impact to make a difference. But in terms of budgets, every school is going to have a very, very different one. And it will very much depend on whether you're in a private sector, international, or a state.
Right. Thank you, Jenny. From your experience, Jenny, what's the biggest draw for a classroom display? Like, what is the one thing that if we didn't have, you would be really cross?
Oh, I think I'm a big fan of working walls. I'm a big fan of the students being able to use it. I agree. I hate pretty wallpaper, and I have been teaching a long time, and I will admit that there have been periods in my life where I may be guilty of that, where I put up my vocabulary words, and then 6 months later, those same words are up there, and the children no longer take any notice of them. So I think it's a really careful balance to keep the displays interactive and to make sure they're continuously circulating. But I think for me as well, I do think it is important to put the children's work up. And I do think it's important that the children see their work celebrated and see that there's value to what they do, not just for being up on a display, because that's awful. Children shouldn't see something up and go, oh, that means I'm really, really good. I'm talking about that idea that some of our staff use, where children self-choose the work that they're proud of, the things that they can talk about. And then when we invite the parents in, they're then able to take the parents to that piece of work and go, look at what I've done. So it's kind of like a dialogue, I guess. So I think for me, it's got to be something that the children own. That would be the thing that needs to be there. I'm not a big worksheet twinkle fan.
Right. Oh, I definitely know that. I forgot to mention, I forgot to let you introduce yourself, Jenny. Sorry, do you want to go ahead and tell us a little bit about who you are and how we know each other?
I know Krishna. Krishna and I worked together when I was head of year 6, and she came in as a TA, and she has been a superstar. And between the two of us, we've both had job changes. So I'm now the head of primary school in Muscat, and Krishna is our newest fantastic NQT. So that's how we know each other.
Thank you so much, Jenny. You've taken the time out. Really appreciate that. Thank you. Moving on to Miss Patricia. Patricia, if you want to come in, Patricia agreed to talk to us a little bit about how displays can help include diversity. She's also a big fan of math. So Patricia, I'll let you do the introduction yourself.
Hi, sorry, first thing, it's Patrice, not Patricia.
Sorry.
It happens a lot, but it's okay. So I'm not sure if I'm the only secondary teacher in the room at the moment. So my relationship with displays is a lot different. When I first came into teaching, which was 6 years ago, my impression was that there was someone in school who was paid to do displays. So it was such a shock to me when I moved into my classroom and we had some time during inset day to do displays. I was like, what? What do you mean I'm doing it myself? So I never expected that at all. It's never really been, to begin with, it wasn't really something that I particularly cared about. I didn't really care what was on the board. I cared more about just what my lessons were about. I'd say recently in the past, maybe 1 or 2 years, I care more about if something's on there, what does it look like? How diverse is it? Is it relevant to your subject? And then how diverse is it? Because that's something that I really care about. With COVID this year, we've been moving all over the place. And so in the secondary school, I had 1 year group that was in the maths room. So my year 7 lesson was in the maths room, but everything else, my year 8 was in geography and languages. My year 9 was up where they do RE. My year 10 was in the science room. Year 11 was in the English room. And so the displays were subject specific to those corridors. But I don't think that had a massive impact in terms of the maths that they learned when I was teaching them. And now that we're back in our own rooms, we have some displays that are the same in every room. So in every room, we have one to do with mental health, because that's really, really important, regardless of the subject that you're learning. We also have one to do with careers and the things that students can be thinking about in terms of what they need to be doing now in order to help them with careers later on. So just a few things about how you can build your CV and what to do in interviews and stuff like that. And then we have some free space for us to do whatever we want. So in my room at the moment, I have, so other than the 2 displays that everybody has, I have one, I think it's called like the famous quotes from mathematicians around the world or something like that. It was something that I was mentioned in a tweet about it. I've bookmarked it, but I can't, I may or may not be able to find it at the moment.
I think I remember seeing that, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought I bookmarked it, but I didn't, but never mind. And so what I really appreciate about that resource is that there's a range of different quotes from a range of different people throughout history. And so there's some quotes from like historical people that are like Pythagoras. And then there's also some quotes from faces that students will recognize. And so my display isn't really something that we refer to in lesson all the time, but it's something that when they're working, they can look at and then they can see, oh, there's a mathematical quote from someone who looks a bit like my dad, you know, and stuff like that. So it's not all just white people and it's not just all men. There's a range of both men and women with a range of different good quotes for them to just think about. So it's not just about what they're doing in lesson, but it's about how it can extend to life outside of school.
Right. Thank you for that, Patrice. Looking back at what you just mentioned about using quotes, isn't there a risk? And I'm just asking this for argument's sake probably, but isn't there a risk? Because a quote has validity if we know who we're talking about. But otherwise, it could be a quote by me, it could be a quote by you. How do we decide what goes up on the wall?
So I don't think it really matters who the quote is from. Because I think we have an issue if we only validate quotes because they're from certain people. If it's a quote that sounds nice, if it's a quote that's motivational, if it's a quote that inspires someone, I don't think it matters who it's from. And so the one that I have on the board, there are some faces that I recognize. And so one of the women, I think her name is Catherine, from one of the Hidden Figures women, you know, from the film. So there's a few
Yes.
people who I recognize, and then there's other people whose face I don't know. I have no idea who they are, but what they said was good. And so I don't think you have to be selective so much about who the quote is from. It's more just about, well, what is the quote and what can students learn from it?
Right. And when you're teaching a lesson, do you actively go back to that quote? Do you actively remind them that about the person and talk about that, or?
No, not really. And I think it's because, as I said earlier, because we've had COVID and such like, so for this year, the display has been up there for ages because we all, when we was going back to school in maybe March, I think it was, that's when we had like a refresher and just making sure all our classes looked presentable. But I wasn't in there until June. And so
Right.
when I've been teaching in a range of different classrooms, which have the subject specific displays that were up there from whenever they were done before COVID happened. So no, the displays aren't really something that I reference unless I'm in a maths classroom, which happened once for most of the year. So anything that they need to know in terms of the content in the lesson is delivered in the lesson. The displays outside, the displays in the room are more for students just to see and take in, and just to know that maths is more than just something that they do within the lesson, that there is maths outside of school. That's how I approach my displays anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for that. PBGA 8146, you've just said that you were also a secondary teacher. Would you like to add to that, please? How do you use displays in your classrooms?
Oh, hello, Krishna. Yes, my name's Leah. I'm a secondary school teacher of English, and I use displays in my classroom. Well, they're kind of a fundamental part to what happens in English with me. Every unit that I plan what is going to be the display for that, because you know the message that I want to send is that we're doing purposeful work to be proud of, and there's a process, and this work is going to be good enough to be on display. And I mean, you're asking about what's on your wall now. Well, on my wall now, there's the stuff from last year, and what will go up on my wall when term starts again is the work that students do. And you know, I will aim to have something from every year group that I teach on the wall, and then you know, when we move on to another subject, I'll take that down, and the next bit will go up. It's a very active process. It is time consuming, but I was just thinking about it today. I'm like, how do I make time? And I guess the thing is that we all have things that we prioritize. And you know, when I have free periods at school, sometimes I'm not in the mood for marking, but I'm not gonna go and sit and chat. That I'll be getting a display ready, putting the students' work up. And I find it really creates a kind of atmosphere where the students come in looking to see what's on the wall. And you know, I'll apologize to them. I'm sorry, I was really busy. I haven't had time to put that up. When they come in, if something new's up, I'll draw their attention to it, and it kind of becomes part of the culture of the class. And you know, the previous speaker who said decoration. Well, it's not decoration. Everything is students' work. I have nothing else on my wall, and you know, it's work that I'm proud of, and I hope that they're proud of. And there'll be something by everyone up on my wall.
Thank you so much for letting us know. Talking about English displays, so what would you say is most useful in a secondary classroom? You've mentioned that it keeps changing depending on what topic, but what really do you want them to get out of it? Is it language? Is it themes? Is it What is it?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think one of the things I want to get out of it is that you don't just piece of work and it's finished. That there's a drafting process, and you start something, you work on it, you make it better, and it and then the final bit is it's published on the wall. That's one thing. I mean, I want students to have a class to be a chance to be creative. I want them to research sometimes. I mean, all sorts go up on the wall. When I put stuff on my social media, it tends to be the more visually appealing stuff. But I put stories, I put articles, there's all sorts there. And I think this is one of the problems we've been throughout COVID, we've been trying to find other ways to showcase work when people haven't been able to come into our classrooms. And it does tend to be the very visually beautiful stuff that goes on Instagram or Twitter, because you just can't publish those stories there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, it absolutely did. Ms. Jackson seems to agree. She says, I agree with you, Leah. My displays help me to visualize the curriculum I will be delivering over the academic year. Right. My next question there, and this is open to every single one of our guests. How would you want your displays to interact with students who have special needs? Because displays that are created for the general classroom can differ, or their needs might slightly differ. So have you ever had a situation where you've had to modify what you put up? Maybe even simple things like change the backing color? Would someone like to go first?
It's
Yes,
something that
Patrice, I
I've
see.
thought about in my slides. So when I deliver lessons, because we have our student passports, and we're told, that there's some students who can't handle like black ink on white paper and stuff like that. So it is something that I will think about more in terms of what the classroom also looks like. So in terms of the things that I have on the board, is it easily accessible? So it's not something I've really considered about yet, but it's something that I will think about more when I'm putting things on the board, just ensuring that the font size, the font color, all that sort of stuff, that it's accessible to all.
Thank you for saying that. I remember during my training year, I made a math display, and this was a year 6 math display, and it was about fractions. And all of the cards, because I'd written the fractions and their equivalents, decimals, and all of that on colored card, and I had chosen fluorescent pink, fluorescent yellow, fluorescent orange, and it was a really popping one. Now, my mentor didn't point that out at the time. Instead, she gave me a link and she asked me to go read it. And I read that, and I came back learning that for SEN students, that could be really visually disturbing. It could be a lot of noise there. So after that, so that was a really good piece of reading there. That I went away learning to make my display boards slightly more neutral, to just calm it down, to accommodate for all our students. So any such experiences?
I visited a school recently. I'm trying to think, which this year has gone so weird. And all their displays, if it was laminated in the matte plastic rather than the shiny plastic. And the TA
Right.
mentioned it's because the shiny plastic was catching the light and catching the student's eye, and making it really difficult for them to focus, because it was almost like shining in their eyes. And then I went back to the school, a different school, like the school I was mainly based at, and I realized, oh, actually, yeah, I'm constantly like, when the light changes, I'm turning my head to see what that little bit is.
Yeah,
So
that's the part where you need to put the blinds down, isn't it?
Unfortunately, I didn't have blinds or windows that open properly. So having displays is always a benefit when you're in that situation. Yeah. So since then, I've thoroughly enjoyed going to all these schools and working in them, and being able to go, okay, I see why you've done that, and I've seen the children that you're doing to support that for. I'm going to keep that in my back pocket, because in a year, 5 years, 10 years down the line, that knowledge might help someone else.
True. Very, very true. Thank you for that, Taria. Jake, you mentioned a lot about your classroom displays. My question is, if you had to pick one thing that something probably like a dream thing you would want to put up on your display, and you haven't managed to get around to that, what would that be?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think for me, and it kind of linked to what Patrice was saying, I am quite big on well-being, and throughout my transition days, etc., I've really focused in on that, because obviously it's a really nervous time to go up in year groups, particularly when there's been COVID and everything that's gone on. And I haven't had a chance to do it. Now, I haven't actually taken a photo of it, but I started to do a feeling, it's not even a board, I'd say it's more on my windows. I've got quite big windows, so I'm making the most out of those resources. And I think particularly in my class, where students can be quite sensitive or etc., and for me, I've always said to them, look, honesty is the best policy, and you could be honest with me and etc., and obviously explain your feelings if you want to do it privately or whatever. And being able to open up to those feelings, and being able to express them in the way that they can. So obviously linking to special educational needs as well, when being able to, like, I don't know, for example, I know in my placement where a child was really struggling to get his emotions across, and I said, okay, well, pick a different color area, for example, that would explain your feelings. And then that's what I focused on in transition, where I said, okay, I've got a color wheel here, or I've got a jar, I think it was a jar one, and I said, fill it up to the brim and say, what are your worries, or how are you feeling about year 4 using a color? And they're able to express that, and then looking at that, okay, what can I do on that display? And I haven't actually done it fully, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how it turns out, and being able for children to take part in that as well, and obviously not expressing their feelings to the fullest and putting that all on the board, but being able to express themselves, to have a healthy classroom, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Definitely does. My same question to you, Rebecca. What would your dream be for a display? What is the one thing you want to see up there?
I don't think I really have a dream, but I think for me, the focus would be on reading, and I have shared a picture of a display that I have created around reading. I wanted to create a space that allowed for children to engage with a range of texts that would be changed quite frequently throughout the academic year, and also based on their own preferences and suggestions as well. And I think for me, it's important to have that rich vocabulary on display as well, making sure that children are exposed to new words and having that opportunity to build on their language comprehension, I think for me is one of the most important things, especially moving on from the pandemic and the impact that that's had on their learning over the last year.
Right. Patrice, do you want to add to that?
Yes. So I was just thinking about, in terms of like some of the things that come up in lesson a lot. One question would be, when are we going to use this in life? And another question is always, well, not a question, but more just like a statement of a defeatist mentality of I can't do maths. And so I know that we have something in our corridor which talks about like different jobs that can use maths, but I'm also thinking about, I think it could be quite nice to have something where, if I can find some examples of people who initially they didn't take to maths well when they were younger, but how they persevered and did well with it. And then also on the flip side, just looking at how you would use the area of a shape or whatever in a real life context. And so that when we have these things of, oh, when are we going to use this in life, I can point to that and say, well, actually, if you was doing such and such, you'd use this. If you was doing this, you'd do that. So that's something that I will look into, bringing in some more real life context into the classroom.
Right. We will take our first break here. Nathan, if you can play the news for us, please. I don't know what I would do today without you, Nathan.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
According to a Guardian news report, universities continue to report record-breaking acceleration in A-level results in England and Wales this summer. With up to half of applicants seemingly being awarded 2 A grades, there is a suggestion that this will leave fewer places available for those who miss out on their first choice. University admissions officers are busy forecasting results, with one admissions officer reportedly suggesting that 45% of entries could be receiving A star and A grades. According to data last year, 38% of entries were awarded A or A star, in an increase on the 25% awarded in 2019. Students have not sat formal exams since 2019 due to the pandemic. Earlier this week, the government announced extra funding for medical and dental schools to cope with the higher numbers, and it has been suggested that some universities may offer incentives to students who could defer their entry until the following academic year. Many school and university leaders, however, have said that suggestions of grade inflation were unfair and unhelpful. Speaking to The Guardian, Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of the National Association of Head Teachers, said that the process of awarding grades had been carefully managed and that each grade must have evidence to support it. Part of the increased pressure on places comes from the increase in applicants, up by 4% from last year. Students, however, will not receive their official grades until next week. In a Schools Week exclusive, Tom Belger reports that Academy Trust CEOs can now serve as advisors to regional school commissioners, even if they do not have head experience. Elections for these posts are set to begin in September. Previously, only trust leaders who had been head teachers within the past 5 years could fill the roles. Now, serving and recently retired heads can stand for election as well as CEOs. Full details of the criteria for candidates include leading an outstanding academy in the past 4 years, serving as a CEO for at least 3 years, and will include checks on the Trust's financial records. According to the DFE, successfully elected members will provide advice and challenge to regional school commissioners. All candidates will be elected by academy heads and executive head teachers. In a further Schools Week report, the government has assembled a panel of music grandees to help create a national plan for music. The NPME was supposed to be published last autumn but was delayed by the pandemic. It is now promised early next year, although no fixed date has been given. The panel will consist of music industry representatives as well as teachers. At the same time, the government has also released a report which summarised responses to a consultation on music education. The responses include only 8.2% of respondents agreeing that high-quality music education was available to all children. And the evidence from the consultation suggests that there is significant variability across schools and across the country. The Government Culture Minister said that she hoped the panel would help to ensure that young people from all backgrounds will have access to exceptional music education.
Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts, or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using the discount code TTRadio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. Every teacher loves stationery, right? Imagine getting a selection of fun, beautiful, and unique stationery items designed and selected especially for teachers, delivered through your door every month. You need to check out teacherslovestationery.club.
I'm always so excited when the box arrives. It's such a treat.
My Teachers Love Stationery Club box is just a little treat to myself every month.
It's always full of delightful and surprising items, including some really good quality stationery brands like Faber-Castell and Stabilo.
And because you never know what you're going to get, it makes it even more fun and special when you get it.
It feels really great to be supporting a family business that's run by real teachers. I can't help feeling like they just know what I'm going to enjoy using stationery-wise better than I do myself.
Visit teacherslovestationery.club and enter the code TTRadio when you buy your first stationery box to save £2 today. teacherslovestationery.club. Introducing the Leadership Masterclass series by Diana Osagi. Learn how to ditch your fears and develop your leadership confidence. How to deal with difficult colleagues. How to thrive when you lead in a challenging environment. And how to get colleagues to buy into your vision. Join Diana for her online leadership masterclasses starting on the 10th of July and running all the way through the summer. These sessions are the perfect way to prepare and refresh for the next academic year and beyond. Book your place at courageousleadership.co.uk/events now. The first 50 leaders to sign up get an additional free mini coaching session with Diana herself. Don't miss this. Courageous Leadership Masterclasses at courageousleadership.co.uk/events.
Thank you, Nathan. Welcome back, everyone. While we were listening to all of that, we've, at least for me here in Muscat, we have crossed over into our Saturday. It is now 12:06 a.m. Right. Just a little bit about that masterclass, leadership masterclass. I'm not sure about you, but while I was training, someone did tell me that we are all leaders of our classroom and we are leading 24 odd students to a very successful life. That I like to remember every time someone mentions the word. Back to our conversations about displays. There is an increasing focus on reading and how best we need to develop, especially now due to COVID, that there is a gap in most of our schools, probably across the world. Question is, reading corners, how can we better them to fulfill what it is that we require? How can we improve our reading corners? Because sometimes we have a beautifully, well, I'm not going to use the word decorated anymore, Jenny, a beautifully created display. We have lots of cushions. We've made it cozy and comfy. Well, is there anything that we need to give our students the extra push to enjoy reading? What do you think? Jake, can we start with you?
Yes. So when I went into my reading corner, I didn't actually have a proper reading corner. It was just a bookshelf with books. And for me personally, and it's been driven throughout my university, it's always been the case of having a proper reading corner, again, being cozy, but it's just more to that. I think it's really important. I actually put a tweet out a while ago. And I was struggling for inspiration because I knew that I wanted to put something there, but I just couldn't see the vision. And people on Twitter, obviously, they're really, really helpful. And a bit like yourself, I'm a bit of addicted to Twitter as well. And I think the one thing that came away from me, and it's something that's really passionate of mine, is having a wide range of texts. And it's not just the diverse authors that we need in our reading corners, but also the fact of there are different texts that children can enjoy. So, for example, I've got some horrible history magazines, and as soon as I start, I'm going to bring newspapers in every day to see if they enjoy them. And one person in particular said about voting and for different texts that the children would like and would use them throughout the week, etc., to support fundamental British values and pupil voice. And I think for me, especially, pupil voice is key for my classroom, but also to promote the equality and diversity of a wide range of authors and illustrators. And for me, especially, we're going soon into like masters in inclusion and social justice. It's about showing the understanding of the world around them, because it's not just EYFS, it's beyond that. And
Right.
I find that making children understand the world around them, but also seeing things from different perspectives, is vital for children to just have a reading corner. So it's not just about the cozy little sofa or the little carpet you put down, which the children may really appreciate because they might not have that at home. But it's the fact that there's a wide range of authors, and for me personally, it's having picture books as well. I think picture books can be undervalued. And when I went into my class and looking through the books, there weren't a lot of picture books, and I love storing picture books and being able to put them in there, but also being able to stretch their knowledge as well. So rather than putting like year 4 books in, I've put a mixture of year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5 books. So they're able to stretch their vocabulary and being able to magpie bits of information that they can use in their texts. And I remember when I was on placement, that really worked effectively. So I think, yeah, it's more than just a cozy corner.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Jake. Interestingly, in year 6 and in year 5 at our school, we have a couple of books that don't have a single word in them. So there's this book called Tuesday, which is about flying frogs. And then there's another book called Varmints, which we used in year 6. Again, it does not have a single word in it. And the teachers used those books to get some amazing pieces of writing and even some artwork out of them. So thank you for that. Jenny Dolman says, model it. Yes, that is one thing that I am personally guilty of, because, and I've seen a lot of teachers do it too. We ask our children to read, we give them reading time, even if it's just 10 minutes, and we use that time to catch up on admin or catch up on something else or fix something around the classroom. We don't show them that we can do it and that we are enjoying our book, unless, of course, we're sitting down and reading to them. It's probably the only time. But yes, definitely model it. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a little more of that. Is there a particular way you would like it modeled? Do you have any suggestions? Do we just sit down and grab a book? Do we discuss it with the kids? Do we pick something that we like, or do we pick something from the children's shelf? Let us know. Patrice, you have said in a secondary setting, our library has a diverse range of books. Representation matters. Would you like to tell us a little more about that? Because we are very, very keen to know more about diversity and representation.
Yeah, like there are books. I can hear like an echo. I'm not sure why. There are books that I've seen in our library that I've then actually bought for myself, and that was the first place I saw it was in our library. There was one book by Blair Imani, and I think the book was called Unsung Heroes of History. I may be making up that title, but it was something about. I can hear an echo again. It was something about key women and trans women in history that have been like put to the side, and mostly to people of color as well. So women and trans women of color, key women in history who have been put aside because the dominant voice in history are white men. So that was a key book that I first saw in the library that I then bought myself, which I thought was really good. And then outside of our library, we have quite a beautiful display. There's one display about, there's one to do with like diverse authors, and there's one that's specifically to do with the LGBTQ community. And so we just cover a range of different things to do with race and also to do with sexuality with our books. And so it's not just a certain set of books. There are a range of them, which I've also learned from as well by reading the books that I've seen there. So I think our school does really well in terms of providing a range of books and a range of ages as well. Because I've seen some of them that would be more appropriate for year 7, year 8, and then there's others that are like the year 10 and year 11 would appreciate it more.
Thank you for that, Patrice. Do you manage to find or be able to model it in the classroom, like Jenny says?
So I've not done it so much in this school, and it may be because of COVID. Why? I'm not sure why, but I know that in other schools that I've worked in, there was one school that was called, what did we call it? We called it Eric, where it was everyone reads in, first it was everyone reads in coaching, where coaching was kind of like tutor time. And so there was one day in the week where it was on the timetable and everybody knew. And so the teacher knew as well that on this day, you do the register and then you all just get your books out and you read. And you did that for the time, like 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever it was. And then that changed into everyone reads in classroom. And so again, everybody knew that it may have been period 3 on a Tuesday, I can't remember the day, but everyone knew that for the first 15-20 minutes of that lesson, regardless of whether you were in maths, English, science, you were reading your book. And so that was a way of just showing that reading isn't just about English. It's not just the English teacher's responsibility. Reading is something that we all do. And then another school, there was another acronym, I think that's the word that you use. So it was DEAR, where it was drop everything and read. So again, it was something where it could be used in lesson time. So when you've delivered your lesson, then you could have like 15 minutes of DEAR time where everyone, you just drop everything, you drop what you're doing and you read for a bit. So there are ways that you can bring it into any subject as like a whole school level or something that you do in tutor time.
Absolutely. Thank you. Jake here says, I love that text. The Jane Constein approach allows children to understand the text with regards to emotions, modeling, and so much more. Jake, I did attend a couple of her training sessions. I think she has them on YouTube too. They were really impressive. The only thing is being able to actually do it. That might require, like Jenny says, a bit of modeling and maybe a bit of practice too, but definitely lovely. Tori says, if you have a local independent bookshop, contact them for local authors. My local shop is hosting a Meet the Authors evening, ranging from poetry to fiction, young adults to biographies. It helps to plant the seed that authors can come from just down the road. So why not me too? Ooh, I like that thought. Jake says, we have dear time as well in our school, and we all do it at the same time. That sounds lovely, being able to have dear time. We also, I remember at our school, we do have dear time, but interestingly, I've got to be careful who I'm saying this to, though. Hopefully she's not listening. We tend to give that just to the kids, and then we get occupied. I don't really know why we get occupied. Maybe it's just because we haven't really been thinking about it. Right. Rebecca, your thoughts, reading corners, improving them, making them more than just a corner that's cozy. What do you think?
Hi. I
We've lost you there, Rebecca.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I definitely think it's not just about what they look like. I agree with what Jake was saying about sharing a love of books, promoting different types of books, different types of text, thinking about the different authors that you've got displayed on your shelves that children can access. And we're quite lucky in our school. We've timetabled every day an opportunity for us to read with our children, to share different texts based on our themes of learning for each half term. And I think that is one of the most important things, having that opportunity to share a wide variety of books and texts with your children, and just show that you enjoy reading yourself, and encourage others, or encourage children to feel the same about reading.
I'm just curious, what's your favorite book there, Rebecca?
My favorite book, I don't really necessarily have a favorite book, but I did really thoroughly enjoy reading Letters from the Lighthouse with my class. We absolutely loved it, and we couldn't put it down as a class. We wanted to make sure that we did pick it up every day and have that time and to read it together.
Nice. Jake says book flex displays are becoming very popular too. I agree. I've seen at least 5 different versions of them, Jake. Very, very cool. We are coming to the end of our show now. So quickly, I'm going to ask every single one of you, what are your top tips to an NQT or a trainee teacher who's going to be thinking about displays? What do you want them to take away from this entire conversation? Let's start with Tori.
Yeah, so my first thing would be to step away from Instagram and to step away from Pinterest and to find out what your school's policies are on displays, because some schools have really strict policies and there's no point spending hours doing beautiful backing to find out that it must be a brown paper with purple borders for English and blue borders for maths. Find that out first, and then you can go and interest in Pinterest and Instagram.
Advice, sorry. Do you have a second one?
Sorry, I can't quite hear you.
I was saying that's a very practical advice there.
Yeah.
Do you have a second one?
My other is just to take genuine pride in it and to really enjoy it and share that love of it for the children. We had our favorite words board, which went from foundation all the way to year 6. The year 6's words were just beautiful. The foundation ones were a bit different, and we had like caterpillar was on there because one of the children in year 1 really liked the fact it had lots of up and down letters, and another child put plop on there because he said it's fun to sound because it moves in your mouth like plop. So just having it to be genuinely fun.
I think caterpillar is going to be my new favorite word too. What's your favorite word?
My word of the month is confelicity, which is the joy you get from other people's joy.
Nice. Good one there. Thank you. Jake, your top tips?
Well, it's quite interesting starting to become an ECT NQT. So just trying to give advice and bring it to people who might not have done it yet. I think the main thing is, and I said this at the start of the show, is to make sure that you go in beforehand and you take pictures of the class so you know your whereabouts. And that's what I did when I went into my classroom. And that way, a couple of days before I went in to design my classroom, I went on a PowerPoint document and I made note of where things were going and where the displays are, where's the interactive whiteboard, etc., etc., and then being able to plan where each board is going to be and what you're going to have in your classroom. And don't be afraid to change it. And this is what I said before, how some NQTs, and I know my friend said it, she said, I've gone into my class and I've absolutely hated it and I've had to change it. And it's like, but that's okay because you know what your expectations are. And I completely agree with Tori as well. And it was the first thing that I asked my senior management team was to make sure you look at your school's expectations, because I have to put the school values in front of my door, what they're going to be reading throughout the term, and what the themes are going to be like, because we are a school that are based around tree names. So what we're going to have in our classrooms. But definitely make sure that you look at the school policies and understand the children as well, because I've got a lot of dyslexic children in my class. So what text would be appropriate for them and what backends would be appropriate for them, and that would have to be consistent.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. I remember we had a child in a year 6 class who had Irene syndrome, and that means they cannot look at any bright light or any bright colors. So we ended up using a lot of faded, even for PowerPoint, we ended up using a very faded background. So yes, so displays are not really limited just to what goes on the wall. It's nice to be able to consider even PowerPoints. Thank you for mentioning that. Patrice, your top tips.
Yeah, so I definitely echo what others have said, sorry, in terms of school expectations. I know in my context that there are 2 displays that I have no control over because it's a whole school thing. As I mentioned before, we've got the careers one, we've got the mental health one. I also know that at the front of the classroom, we've got 1 poster to do with equipment expectations, and we've got 1 poster about behaviour for learning. And so I know that that's already there. So then I'm working with whatever space I have left. Diversity is a big thing for me. So I would say that to begin with, you are 100% responsible for your classroom. And so if your classroom are just full of white people, that's on you. If your classroom is full of just men, that's on you. So absolutely take ownership for yourself and your classroom first. And then after that point, when you have time, see if you can, so I'm thinking more in a secondary context. It's been a while since I've been in primary school, so I can't remember what they look like. So I'm just thinking about in a secondary context. Once you've done your classroom, then have a look, what does your corridor look like? Is your corridor very diverse? And if it's not, don't be afraid to be that voice to speak to your curriculum leaders, and don't just bring a complaint. So if you just say it's not diverse and that's the end of the conversation, that's not good enough. But if you have any ideas and you bring suggestions about what can be done in that corridor to make it more representative, not just of your school, but of society, because if you're working in a boys' school, that's not an excuse to just have men on display when, women in STEM is a thing. So look at your corridors, and then even after that point, if you have time, just go walk around the school as well. And if there's any concerns about it not being diverse enough, just have the right conversations with the right people, and see what you can do to ensure that your school has that ethos of being representative of the society that we live in.
Thank you, Patrice. One of the things that I've spent a lot of time doing this summer has been creating a curriculum map. Now, I am also part of the DEI team at my school, and this summer I've spent a lot of time looking at what topics we're covering. At least we don't really know whether we'll stick with them, but at least the topics that we have covered in the past year. I can see if I am able to find images of people, or like things like origins, like Pythagoras theorem. So where does that have an Arabic origin anywhere? Is there someone who contributed to something else? So be it history, be it science. And I've come up with a lot of stickers. I think it's somewhere on my Twitter feed. I will refresh and retweet that. But thank you for mentioning that. It's about putting up displays that allow all children to feel like, yes, it is possible for someone who looks like them, or someone who comes from a similar country or nation or continent, to be able to achieve those great heights. Thank you, Patrice. Rebecca, your final tips.
I think that we need to think about making sure our displays are vocabulary rich and that they relate to current learning. So like we've already discussed earlier this evening, that they're not just wallpaper to fill the classroom walls, making sure that they're inclusive and that we're celebrating children's work within those displays, maybe sharing some modelled examples for children to draw upon throughout their time in the classroom, thinking about making sure that there are displays that enthuse and engage children and develop their curiosity through the different maybe artifacts or high quality text that you've got combined with your display, and opportunities for children to have discussion based around what you've displayed in your classroom, and making sure that they're interesting and kind of draw children in and make them want to go away and research
and explore
or the topic further.
Absolutely. Make them want to go out and explore. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca. And the person who's been very, very quiet, Nathan, would you like to offer some top tips, Nathan? Nathan, I'm hoping you're still there because I still need you to play the closing track. Do you have any top tips? Okay, I'm not sure where Nathan is, but anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for listening, everyone who's been listening. I can
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.